Hello and welcome from the Cont4S team. Cont4S, that's Content for Solutions. My name is Björn. In today's video I will present our services for providing ready-to-run SAP AIF-Interfaces. Have fun! So one content we provide are ready-to-run SAP AIF-Interfaces. Whenever you have a requirement for such an AIF interface, you can contact us. We will analyze your needs and based on that, design and implement an SAP AIF interface that is ready to run. We will also deliver that into your system. Let me show you on a slide the contents of this video. As you can see, we will discuss 4 different options for creation of such an SAP AIF interface, and then at the end of the video we will also have a look at the system and look at a typical SAP AIF interface for a BAPI, and we will see the content that we provide and that we will deliver into your system for such an interface. The first option for creation of such an interface is a BAPI. There are lots of BAPIs in the system that are delivered by SAP and that can be used to insert and modify data in the system. Examples for BAPIs are material master, sales and purchase order or cost centers, and of course these BAPIs can be used also as part of an SAP AIF interface. That means whenever you have the need for such an interface, you can name the BAPI, we will analyze the interface structure of the BAPI and then create a corresponding SAP AIF interface that covers all the fields, structures and tables that are available in the BAPI interface. Of course also including any customer extensions that you might have for this BAPI. The second option for such an interface is a table. You name the table and we will analyze the structure and the fields of the table and create a corresponding SAP AIF interface that can be delivered into your system. You are then able to insert, modify, update and delete entries of this table. For safety reasons, it is required to have a customizing for this table. And also there are certain authorization checks performed before deploying this interface. The third option for creation of such an interface is to record a transaction. We are delivering a functionality that allows you to record transactions. You can then send the recorded transaction data to us and we will create, based on this data, an SAP AIF interface that is ready to run. Examples for transactions could be something like reposting of costs in the CO. You have a vast number of batch input session interfaces in your system at the moment. Then the fourth option might be of interest for you, because this option allows you to create an interface based on an existing batch input session. What you can do is you download and send us the data of a batch input session, and then we will analyze this batch input session and based on this data create a corresponding SAP AIF interface for that. You then only need to register your batch input program name and the session name in a customizing, and this will make a switch so that the interface data doesn't go to the batch input session anymore, but instead is directed into the SAP AIF interface. You do not need to make any changes to your code in the batch input program. We are now logged into the SAP system. And the first thing I want to show you is the function module I picked for today's example. That's the function module BAPI Material Save Data. This function module can be used to create material master data in the SAP system. So let's have a look at the interface of this function module. First we go to the import section. In the import section there are a lot of different structures that are available. And these structures of course contain also lots of different fields. If we look at, for example, the plant data, you can see that there are 170 fields just within this one structure. So it's a rather complex interface, and it also has a tables section. In the table section we find additional information that can be transferred to the material master in the SAP system. It also has an enhancement. This will not be included in the SAP AIF-Interface because I can show you the enhancement is active, but still it's switched off. So we do not include these 4 tables in the SAP AIF-Interface. But all the other tables and structures and fields can be found later on when we compare the SAP AIF interface with the BAPI interface. Now I want to show you the corresponding SAP AIF interface for this function module. So we go to a different window, and there we can start the AIF customizing. We can do that by using the standard customizing transaction provided by SAP, which would be AIF Cust. And as a different alternative, we can use the C4S integrator customizing transaction. And if we do so, we have the advantage that this covers all the settings that can be customized for the complete flow from an Excel sheet into the SAP system. For today we only want to look at the AIF part, so this is also included in the customizing tree. Here we are looking first at the definition of the interface. As you can see, there's a namespace required. I am using a separate namespace just for these demo videos. And here we are in the definition of the interface. In the header section we find the key fields for the interface, which is the namespace that we have already seen. And then we have also the interface name and version that are also key fields. The key fields are followed by a short description of the interface, and then we have 2 different structures. On one side we have the raw structure. The raw structure is the data format that is delivered to the SAP system from the external system or from the Excel sheet. So this is the initial structure for the interface. Within SAP AIF, then there's a mapping from the raw structure to the SAP structure. And now we're going to have a look at the SAP structure. So I double click here. On the top level we have just one component called main. Below this component we find all the different structures and tables of the interface, and in addition we have a component MPI as the first component. This is message processing information, so this contains all information that is required to successfully execute the AIF interface. This is followed then by first the structures of the BAPI. So if we go to the different mode again, back to the BAPI and display the interface. Let me just move the window slightly so we can see that the function module interface structures can also be found here in the SAP AIF interface. And also in the table section we can see here we have in the bottom of our SAP AIF interface we find all the tables, and there we have, for example, the material description. So the material description contains 4 fields, and if I look on the other window for the material description here, of course we find the same fields like in the SAP AIF component. So let's go back to the interface definition. In the interface definition there's one more field I want to talk about. That's the move corresponding of structures. As you can see, it's not switched on, so we are not using that. If you use that, it's pretty easy. Then the system just takes whatever contents arrives in the raw structure of the interface and puts the contents into the corresponding fields of the SAP structure. That's an easy way of setting up the interface, but if you want to make changes for different fields, then it's not that easy anymore. So we are not using that. Instead we provide a single field by field mapping that I want to show you next. So let's get back to the customizing tree, and then we are going to look at the definition of the structure mapping. Of course I have to enter the key fields for my interface. Now I have an overview of all the source structures that are available in my SAP AIF interface. The first line, where we don't have a text, is the line that contains all the structures of the SAP BAPI interface. And this is followed by all the tables that are part of the BAPI interface. So if we look at the line with the mapping of the structures, we go one step down to the assignment of the destination structure. We have seen this main component in the structure, the SAP structure we looked at. And another step down we come to the field mapping, and here we can see all the fields of all the structures that are part of the BAPI interface. So here we have, for example, the client data. If we go to the BAPI interface again, and in the import section where we have all the structures, we can find the structure client data with all the components, and these components are also here part of the SAP AIF interface. As you can see, it starts with client data, and then we can find all the fields of all the tables, plant data, sales data. All the structures can be found here, and all the fields of the structures are mapped as single field by field mapping. And of course we have the same also for the tables. So we looked at the material description before. That was one of the tables of the BAPI. We also have the same destination structure assigned, and in the field mapping we find the 4 fields for the material description table that can be delivered for the SAP master data of the material. The field by field mapping is of course more work in the setup of the interface, but that is something we deliver for our customers. And the field by field mapping of course has the advantage that it's a lot easier if you want to modify the mapping. If you have requirement for a different mapping than the standard mapping for a given field, or if you want to have different checks assigned to specific fields, then it's a lot easier if a field by field mapping is provided instead of the structure mapping of the complete structure. Finally, we're going to have a quick view at the action. An action is required to execute the interface. That means it will take the data that was transferred in the mapping from the raw to the SAP structure. It will take the data from the SAP structure, move it to the corresponding parameters of the BAPI interface, structures and tables, and then executes the BAPI. So we provide an action for exactly this execution for the material master here. So we are already at the end of our video for today. I hope it was of interest for you and your business. We would be glad to assist you in any plans regarding interfaces between SAP and other systems in any direction. You can find our contact data in the details of this video and of course on our homepage. There soon will be a video regarding the integration of such an SAP AIF interface that we have seen today in the data flow between Excel and SAP system. Thanks for your patience and your interest. See you next time.